Welcome to the Sociology Tutor channel. My name's Tom and today we're going to be focusing on what is a functionalist view of religion. We're going to particularly be thinking about it in terms of evaluating the functionalist view of religion, which is how a typical question would be worded for A Level Sociology students. So evaluate the functionalist view of religion. So I'm going to begin by giving a brief overview of what functionalists think about society. I'm then going to look at Durkheim's theory of religion and then also look at Bellah's theory of civil religion. Then I'm going to give 4 evaluations that you can use to really boost those analysis marks, those evaluation marks in your answer, which is going to boost your grade into those very top parts of the mark scheme. And at the end of the video, I'm going to explain how I would answer a question on the topic. So thanks for watching. I'm going to be posting a huge amount of content throughout the year, particularly around exam time. So subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment if there's particular things you want to hear more about, any topics you're not sure about, which we can then add. Let's begin by looking at a functionalist overall view of society. So functionalism is a structural theory. So structural theories argue that people are strongly shaped by society, by the social structure, that people don't really have a huge amount of free will in their decision making. People are strongly shaped by family, education, media, religion. And structural theories start by thinking about society as a whole and working their way down. So they think about society as a whole, and then they think about the roles that different institutions have, and then they think about how that shapes people's behaviour. So from a functionalist perspective, the key question to ask is, what are the needs of society? What stops society breaking down and disintegrating? And the most important need society has is social order. You know, we have to have social order to stop society breaking down. What we mean by social order is agreement on how people are going to lead their lives. So there is cooperation, harmony, etc. And there's a lack of conflict. Now, if we didn't have social order, of course, society would be a complete mess. So from a functionalist perspective, religion plays a key role in this because it socialises people into the value consensus. So for functionalists, a value consensus refers to agreement around the norms, values, ideas, beliefs, etc. that exist in society. And when there's a value consensus, it means that people in society all agree on those things, and therefore there is cooperation, harmony, etc. and there's less conflict. It's not hard to imagine a society if there was complete disagreement over how to lead your life, that there would be huge amounts of conflict. So the key question always from a functionalist perspective when we're thinking about religion is, what role is religion performing which maintains social order and reduces conflict? Now, a really good example to think of this is, of course, COVID-19 lockdown. At the start of the lockdown period, we can say there was a value consensus around how to behave. Almost everyone followed the rules. They followed the expectations that were put out, and that created social order. People were maintaining social distancing and following all the expectations that were given. So that's a good example of the value consensus working. Let's begin with Emil Durkheim, one of the key functionalist thinkers on religion. Durkheim argued that by studying religion in its simplest form, he could understand the essence of all religions. So by studying the most basic form of religion, he could see what was common in all types of religion. So he studied the Arunta, who were a tribe, an Aboriginal tribe in Australia, and they were part of a clan system. So there would be lots of other tribes which would all be part of one clan, which is perhaps easiest to think of as just as a much bigger tribe. So he was studying the Arunta, and what he found was that they worshipped the totem pole. Now, the totem pole represented their tribe. So on the totem pole there would be carved images of animals, images of plants, images which represented their tribe and their clan, and it was sacred to them. So when they worshipped, when they performed their religious worship, they gathered in groups and they would worship around the totem pole. Now, what Durkheim argues is actually happening here is they're worshipping society itself. because the totem pole represents society. It's got the images that are the history of the clan, the tribe, and therefore by worshipping those images and worshipping in that space, what they're actually doing is worshipping society itself. And of course what that does is build a sense of social solidarity, a sense of togetherness. It builds a shared identity, and what that does is create social order, harmony, and it prevents society from breaking down because people share that experience. So for Durkheim, the key thing to notice in all religions is collective worship. Collective means worshipping in a group, and by worshipping in a group and worshipping together, you build those concepts that I've mentioned, which are, as we said, social solidarity, a shared identity, and by having all of those shared experiences, you prevent a breakdown of society and you maintain social order. So just to remind you, he really believed by understanding religion in its simplest form, he could understand all types of religion anywhere, and that's what he based his theory on. So from Durkheim's perspective, the key defining feature of religion is the worship of the sacred. And the sacred refers to objects or places which create strong emotional experiences in people. So those strong emotional experiences could be fear, awe, where they're overwhelmed potentially, and wonder. And by worshipping in those sacred places or with those sacred objects and having those strong, powerful emotional experiences, and also sharing those with other people, so remember it's always a collective experience, what that does is create that strong sense of social solidarity, shared identity, and it also defines what's important for society in terms of norms, values, and ideas. So Durkheim argued sacred objects and places usually come with a wide range of restrictions on them. So, you can only wear certain clothing into mosques or temples, for example. There are strict rules and rituals associated with, using certain items in religious practices. So for Durkheim, these rituals and these strict rules around how the sacred objects and the sacred places are used further separates them from day-to-day society, and it creates these strong emotional experiences for the social group when they worship in them or when they worship with them. Durkheim contrasts the sacred with the profane. Now the profane refers to the everyday, the non-religious, the non-spiritual, things that don't give you a strong, powerful emotional response. Now the key thing to remind ourselves always is that for Durkheim, the worshipping of the sacred objects is actually the worship of society itself. From Durkheim's perspective, people aren't aware that they're worshipping society themselves when they worship at church, for example, but for Durkheim, that's really what they are doing. They're worshipping the power of society and the fact that they need society to survive. So let's think about the specific functions. When we use the word functions, we mean the jobs that religion performs for society. Now, one of the first ones is it creates something called a collective conscience. Now, your conscience is your sense of right and wrong. It's that internal message. Should I do this? Should I do that? And what Durkheim is saying is religion creates a collective conscience in the sense that everyone in society shares the same sense of right and wrong. When they're thinking about a decision about how they should do something, they all have a shared experience to fall back on, and that reduces social conflict and maintains social order in society. So for example, from a functionalist perspective, if we take the 10 Commandments in Christianity, those 10 Commandments from a Christian perspective obviously come from the Bible and come from the teachings of Jesus, God, etc. But from a functionalist perspective, really what they are the rules of society. And when we're worshipping and learning about those ideas in church, if you're a Christian, what you're really doing is learning the rules of society, how to lead your life. So it creates this collective conscience, which is our sense of right and wrong, how do we lead our lives, and also remember that shared sense of identity. The second function it performs is social solidarity, our sense of togetherness. That's what social solidarity means. So by worshipping in the group and having that collective worship, we're going to feel very loyal to society and loyal to one another. We're going to feel duty bound to follow the rules. And what that does again is prevent that what that does is maintain social order and prevent social breakdown. So we can see how religion is performing these jobs, these functions which maintain social order. You may be thinking, how does this idea still apply to modern societies when we've got so many people who aren't religious, and of course so many different types of religion, massive religious diversity compared to Durkheim's time, when he would have been writing, everyone in Europe would have been Christian and the majority of people would have been Catholic. So how does it still apply? Now, what Durkheim and other functionists argue was that if religion disappeared, then new forms of collective activities, collective worship of society would replace it. So the key functionalist thinker you can use to explain how functionalism and a functionalist view of religion is still relevant is Robert Bellah. Bellah argues that what's replaced religion in America, which is where his ideas come from, is something called civil religion. So if we take America, and this would apply to other countries too, obviously there is extreme ethnic, religious diversity. There's a huge range of different communities, so it'd be impossible to say that religion is maintaining social order, that collective worship is performing the functions that we've talked about, because there are just so many different types of religion, so many different cultural groups, communities, etc. What Bellah says replaces that is civil religion. Now, civil religion refers to people simply worshipping society directly. So rather than religion being a way to worship society, which is what Durkheim said, Bellah argues actually what's happening is people just worship society and the American way of life in a direct way. So even though all of these people from all these many different backgrounds exist in America, many different religions, what unites them together, what they all share, is a belief in the American way of life, a belief in Americanism. And that is expressed through activities which seem to have almost a religious quality. So for example, flag waving in America, saluting the flag, children salute the flag in school in the mornings. And the president, for example, almost takes on a godlike quality, which is quite weird when we think about that with Trump. But we can see this in the way the American president is introduced if they're going to speak to the nation, or if they're speaking to, journalists. At the end of many speeches, they end the speech by saying, "God bless America." The Constitution, which is the document which outlines the rules of government and the rights that citizens have, takes on almost a religious quality. It's a bit like a holy text for many Americans. And the American dream, the idea that anyone can make it in America as long as they work hard, is shared and is universally talked about, and it's pushed as an idea, and it's pushed forward frequently in the media. So civil religion creates that social solidarity, that sense of togetherness, that collective conscience which wouldn't exist otherwise. So it's replaced traditional forms of religion, and it still has the same effect. Now, this is really important because Durkheim said religion would always be a part of society because it performs the functions that we've talked about. And what you can do is use Bellah's ideas to say, yes, religion is still part of society, but now it's civil religion. It's worship of society directly through collective worshipping activities. Now, Bellah himself recognised that this is becoming increasingly more difficult in today's society because people are just much more individualistic now. They don't believe in the importance of these sort of collective activities, and also the trust in government has been undermined recently through various scandals. So it's hard for people to worship society in the way that they used to because they don't trust in society quite as much. However, he does highlight the ways in which the war on terror and the ideas that were put forward, like America versus terror, has actually recreated some of that social solidarity and reinforced that collective identity. So civil religion, really key, as we've said, to use to back up the idea that religion is a key part of society. It performs those functions from a functionalist perspective, and therefore it always exists in some form in society. Let's consider some of the evaluations. Remember, in your answers to get those top grades, you're not just going to describe a functionalist view of a religion, you're going to evaluate it, you're going to criticise it, praise it, etc. So the biggest criticism you can make, I think the most powerful, is that functionalism focuses on the benefits that religion has for society as a whole. So remember, religion from a functionalist perspective maintains that social order, that social solidarity, that stability in society. But what functionalists ignore is the role religion has in oppressing and keeping many groups in an inferior position in society. So from a feminist perspective, religion oppresses women. It keeps them in an inferior second place position in society. Religion has traditionally, and many religions have traditionally been opposed to or certainly limited the rights of same-sex couples. LGBT communities have been oppressed by religion. So religion from a functionalist perspective, yes, has the benefits for society, but it ignores how it affects individuals and how it affects groups. So we can see that religion has oppressed, many groups, particularly women and the groups I've highlighted. The second point is functionalists focus on the positives of religion, the positive functions in maintaining social stability and order. But throughout history, we can see that there has been a number of conflicts that have been related to religion. So we can see conflicts within religions, single religions themselves. So historically, the Protestants and the Catholics have been in conflict. Shia and Sunni Muslims have been in conflict. So within religions, there's conflict. And of course, between religions, there's been conflict. So religion can also be a powerful force for creating disorder and not promoting social solidarity at all. The third criticism we can make specifically of Durkheim is that he actually misunderstood the Arunta, and his distinction between the sacred and the profane was too black and white. More importantly, the criticism we can make of Durkheim is, can we really generalise from this one tribal community that he studied, the Arunta, and then say that he found the essence of all religions? A lot of sociologists would disagree with that, and this idea that collective worship of the sacred, is the essence of all religions, is that how all people worship. And I've already mentioned how Bellah himself recognised that even civil religion is losing its influence in society as individualism is on the rise, and people are, well, as we said, people are more individualistic, so they don't feel as attached to the nation, as attached to society, and therefore those collective rituals, celebrating the royal wedding, celebrating sporting achievements, celebrating the nation, those collective forms of worship of society have less power over people, and therefore civil religion isn't going to create social order, social solidarity, etc. If I was answering a question that said evaluate the functionalist view of religion, I'd be quite critical of it because it's quite out of date. In Britain and most of Europe, the countries are very secular. Secularisation is happening. Countries are becoming less religious. There's massive religious diversity. So the core ideas of functionalism, the idea that religion creates social solidarity and a sense of togetherness and a shared identity which maintains social order, it's very hard to see how religion does that in European societies, in the UK, and similarly in America. America is becoming a secular country. It's happening a bit slower than it did in Europe, but it is secularising. And there's of course massive religious diversity. Also, the idea that civil religion is simply replacing traditional religion and therefore performing those functions, again, I don't think the evidence is there for that. There's a very wide range of views about the nation, and the idea that we celebrate the nation and celebrate society in a sacred way, I don't think applies in a wide-ranging way to the majority of people in society. A lot of people have distrust of the government, they're cynical, they're unhappy with the government. So I don't think religion is replacing it. And remember, Bellah agreed with that himself. Well done for listening to this session. At the end of the video, there's going to be links to a Marxist view of religion and a feminist view of religion. So if you get a question on any of the theories, obviously you want to bring the other theories in to criticize, to evaluate, to explain how they agree and disagree with one another. There's also going to be a link to my website, so sociologytutor.com, which you can use for more resources. I'm going to be posting essay plans, those sorts of things to it, and building it up over time. Also remember to leave a comment if there's something you're not sure about, there's videos you would like me to do or topics that you just want to go over again, then obviously leave a comment and we can add to those. As I said, I'm going to be adding videos throughout the year, particularly around exam time with my exam tips, what I think is going to come up in the exam. The exam's quite predictable often, you can usually guess a couple of the topics. So well done for listening, thanks for watching.